Some nights, the world tilts on its axis, and nothing is ever the same again. The fluorescent lights flickered like dying stars. The air tasted of rain that hadn't fallen yet, and in that empty parking lot, between the smell of old coffee and gasoline, destiny wore a stranger's face, ancient, beautiful, and impossibly dangerous. She didn't know that one slap would shatter centuries of silence. She didn't know that one kiss would bind two souls across the veil between life and death. But the moment her hand met his face, the clock started ticking on something neither of them could stop. The neon sign of Rosie's Diner buzzed and crackled, casting pink and blue shadows across the cracked asphalt. Maya wiped her hands on her apron for the 100th time that night, the fabric stained with ketchup, coffee, and the exhaustion of a double shift. Her feet ached. Her lower back screamed. The smell of grease had soaked so deep into her skin, she wondered if she'd ever feel clean again. It was 2:47 a.m. The diner was finally empty. Even Roger, the night cook, had left through the back, his motorcycle roaring into the darkness 15 minutes ago. Maya was alone with the hum of the industrial refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. She pushed the back door into the parking lot, her canvas bag slung over one shoulder, keys jingling in her hand. The October air bit at her cheeks, sharp and clean after the suffocating heat of the kitchen. She breathed it in deeply, letting it fill her lungs, clear her head. That's when she felt it. A presence. Not heard, not seen, just felt, like a change in air pressure before a storm, like the moment before lightning strikes. Maya turned slowly. He stood near the dumpsters, perfectly still, as if he'd always been there, as if he'd materialized from the shadows themselves. Tall, impossibly so, dressed in dark clothing that seemed to absorb the stuttering fluorescent light rather than reflect it. His face was angular, beautiful in a way that made her throat tighten. The kind of beauty that belonged to museums and oil paintings in places where mortals whisper prayers. His eyes found hers across the empty space. Even from this distance, she could see they were dark, not brown, not black, something deeper, something that held centuries. "You're still here," he said. His voice was low, textured, like velvet dragged across stone. Maya's hand tightened around her keys, the metal teeth pressing into her palm. "Do I know you?" He moved then. Not walked, moved. One moment he was 20 feet away. The next he was close enough that she could smell him. Rain and old books and something metallic, like copper left in the sun. "No," he said simply. "But I know you." Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet stayed planted. There was something magnetic about him, something that made the air between them feel alive, electric. "That's a creepy thing to say to someone in an empty parking lot at 3 a.m, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. "I suppose it is. So maybe you should—" He kissed her. No warning. No preamble. He simply closed the distance, his hand cradling the back of her head with surprising gentleness, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was intense, claiming, filled with a hunger that made her entire body go rigid with shock. For a split second, Maya's mind went blank. Then instinct kicked in. Not fear, not desire, but pure, blazing anger at the presumption, the arrogance, the violation of her space, her choice. She pulled back and slapped him. The sound cracked through the parking lot like a gunshot. Her palm stung. His head turned slightly with the force of it, dark hair falling across his forehead. Silence. He straightened slowly, turning to look at her again. There was no anger in his expression, no shock. Instead, there was something else, something that looked almost like respect. His eyes had changed, darkened further, and now there was a glimmer of red in their depths, like embers buried in ash. "You struck me," he said quietly. "You kissed me without asking." Maya's voice shook, but not with fear, with adrenaline, with something wild and reckless rising up from a place she didn't know existed. "What did you think would happen?" "I thought—" He trailed off, studying her face as if seeing her for the first time. "I didn't think." "Yeah, well, maybe start." He took a step back, giving her space, And for some reason, that gesture, that simple acknowledgement of her boundaries after he violated them, did something to her. Something she couldn't name. The anger didn't disappear, but it shifted, transformed into something more complex. "I apologize," he said, and the formality of it was somehow more sincere than any casual sorry could have been. That was inappropriate. Maya should have walked away, should have gotten in her beat-up Honda and driven home and locked the door and called the police and never thought about this moment again. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why did you do it?" His eyes met hers. In the flickering light, she could see the planes of his face more clearly now. The sharp cheekbones, the full lips, the slight furrow between his brows, as if he was puzzling out a question he'd never had to answer before. "Because I've been watching you for 3 weeks," he said. "Because every night you leave this place exhausted, but you still smile at the homeless man who sits by the highway entrance. Because you slip extra food into takeout bags when you think no one is looking. Because you hum when you wipe down tables, and you don't realize you're doing it." He paused. "Because in 700 years, I have never met anyone who made me forget what I am." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and true. 700 years. Maya should have laughed, should have dismissed him as crazy. But something in the way he said it, the weight of it, the exhaustion buried under the words, made her believe him. "What are you?" she whispered. He smiled then, really smiled, and she saw them, fangs, just for a moment, catching the light, before his expression softened back into something almost human. "Something you should run from," he said. Maya's breath caught. Vampire. The word screamed through her mind, ridiculous and terrifying and somehow impossibly right. Everything about him suddenly made sense. The stillness, the inhuman beauty, the way he moved like gravity didn't quite apply to him. She should run. Every logical part of her brain was screaming at her to run. Instead, she stepped forward, grabbed the front of his shirt in both fists, and pulled him down to her level. "My turn," she breathed. And then she kissed him. This kiss was different. This kiss was her choice, her decision, her desire burning to the shock and fear and anger. She kissed him harder than he'd kissed her, fiercer, pouring 3 years of exhaustion and loneliness and suffocated dreams into the press of her lips against his. He froze for half a heartbeat. Then his arms came around her, careful, controlled, as if he was afraid she'd break. But Maya didn't want careful. She deepened the kiss, her fingers tangling in his hair, and felt his control slip. His grip tightened. His lips parted against hers. A low sound rumbled from his chest, something between a growl and a sigh, and suddenly the world narrowed to just this. The taste of him reigned in darkness and something ancient, the strength of his arms, the way her body fit against his like puzzle pieces finally finding their match. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, though she suspected he didn't actually need to breathe, Maya's mind was spinning. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. His forehead rested against hers. His eyes were fully red now, glowing softly in the darkness. "Dangerous," he said. "That was dangerous." "For who?" "Both of us." They stood there, neither moving, the October wind whipping around them. Maya knew she should be terrified, knew she should push him away and never look back. But all she could think was how right this felt, how alive she felt, for the first time in years, truly alive. "I'm Maya," she finally said. "I know." He pulled back slightly, studying her face. "I'm Lucian." Lucian. She tested the name on her tongue. "That's very vampire-y." He almost laughed. "I was born in 1287. Dramatic names were fashionable. And now you're... what?" Slumming it, watching waitresses in diners. Something flickered across his face. "Pain, maybe? Or regret. Now I'm breaking rules that have stood for centuries." "What rules?" Lucian's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing her lower lip with devastating gentleness. "The ones that say a king should never touch a mortal. The ones that say desire is weakness. The ones that kept my kind separate from yours for 1,000 years. His eyes bored into hers. "The ones I don't care about anymore." Maya's heart stuttered. "You're a king of a world you don't know exists. Yet," she repeated, The word fell heavy with promise and threat. Someone shouted in the distance, a drunk stumbling from a bar down the street. The spell broke. Lucian stepped back, his expression closing off, becoming regal and distant. "You should go home," he said. "Forget this happened. Will you?" "No." The word was absolute. "I couldn't if I tried." Maya's keys were still clutched in her hand. Her car was 10 feet away. Safety was 10 feet away. Normal was 10 feet away. She didn't move toward it. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Lucian's expression was unreadable. "Do you want to?" "I don't know what I want. I just know." She swallowed hard. "I know I'm not ready for this to be over." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a coin ancient and worn, with symbols she didn't recognize. "Keep this," he said, pressing it into her palm. The metal was warm, as if it had been resting against the skin. "If you're in danger, hold it and think of me. I'll come." "That's not an answer. It's a promise." He stepped back into shadows. "Go home, Maya. Lock your doors. And try to sleep. Tomorrow, your life changes." "It already has," she said. But he was already gone, dissolved into darkness as if he'd never been there at all. Maya stood alone in the parking lot, her lips still tingling, her heart still racing, an ancient coin warming her palm. Above her, the fluorescent lights finally died completely, plunging the world into darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, she heard his voice carried on the wind. "Mine." Maya didn't sleep. She lay in her studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, the ancient coin resting on her chest, rising and falling with each breath. Outside, the city hummed a perpetual song. Sirens, traffic, the bass thump from the club 3 blocks over. Normal sounds. Human sounds. She pressed her fingers to her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. Vampire. The word rattled around her skull, absurd and undeniable. She'd always dismissed such things as fantasy, as stories told to entertain or frighten. But the evidence was undeniable. The way he moved, the stillness of him, those eyes that held too much time. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. 5:47 a.m. The screen showed a text from Jenna, her co-worker. "Girl, where were you?" "Some guy was asking about you at the diner. Tall, hot, looked expensive. Said he'd come back." Maya's pulse quickened. Lucian. It had to be. She typed back, "What did he want?" The response came immediately. "Didn't say. Just asked when you'd be working again. Gave me serious billionaire vibes. You holding out on me?" Details needed ASAP. Maya set the phone down without responding. How could she explain something she didn't understand herself? How could she tell Jenna that she kissed a vampire king in a parking lot and now felt like her entire existence had tilted off its axis? She rolled out of bed, every muscle aching from yesterday's double shift. The coin slipped from her chest, landing on the threadbare carpet with a soft thud. When she picked it up, she noticed something she'd missed in the darkness. Tiny inscriptions along the edge, words in a language that looked almost Latin but not quite. Vinculum Regis. She didn't know what it meant, but somehow the words made her chest tighten. The morning passed in a blur. Maya showered, dressed, made coffee she didn't drink. She stood at her window overlooking the street, watching people hurry to work, to school, to lives that made sense. She envied them. 24 hours ago, she'd been one of them. Now she stood on the other side of an invisible line, looking back at the life she used to have. Her shift didn't start until 3. She had hours to kill, hours to decide if she was going to show up at all, or pack her bags and disappear into a city that swallowed people whole every day. Instead, she found herself at the public library. The old building smelled like dust and aged paper, the kind of scent that usually comforted her. Today it felt oppressive, like the weight of all that accumulated knowledge was pressing down on her skull. She found a computer in the back corner and started searching. Vampires, real sightings, historical accounts. Most of what came up was garbage. Sparkly vampires, sexy vampires, vampires that were really just misunderstood bad boys with commitment issues. But deeper in the search results, she found something else. Academic articles, folklore databases, obscure historical texts that had been digitized and uploaded by universities, references to bloodlines, to courts, to ancient families that had ruled from shadows for millennia. One article caught her eye. The nocturnal hierarchy, power structures in European vampire mythology. It discussed the concept of vampire kings, territorial rulers who maintained order among their kind, prevented exposure, enforced ancient laws. Kings who were forbidden from forming emotional attachments to mortals. One passage read, "Such bonds are considered the ultimate weakness, exploitable by enemies and destabilizing to the delicate balance between species." Maya's hands trembled on the keyboard. That's what he'd meant. The rules he was breaking. This wasn't just some supernatural fling. It was treason against his own kind. Find what you were looking for? She jumped, spinning in her chair. An old woman stood behind her, impossibly old, with skin like crumpled paper and eyes that were too clear, too sharp. She wore a floral dress that might have been fashionable 40 years ago and carried a worn leather bag over one arm. I was just researching, Maya stammered. The woman's gaze flicked to the computer screen, then back to Maya's face. Researching vampires. At 10 in the morning, in a public library. She smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. Either you're writing a very derivative novel, or you've met one. Maya's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? The woman sat in the chair beside her, uninvited, moving with surprising grace. You have the look, dear, that shell-shocked expression of someone whose world just got much bigger and much darker. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Let me guess. Tall? Beautiful? Eyes that make you forget your own name? Said things that should sound crazy but somehow ring true. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't move. The old woman nodded, as if Maya confirmed everything. Which one? Which what? Which bloodline? The Moravian court? The Crimson Houses of the East? The Nightborn Council? When Maya just stared blankly, the woman sighed. You don't even know what you've stumbled into, do you? Who are you? Someone who knows what you need to know. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. It looked ancient, the cover cracked and faded. Take this. Read it. And whatever you do, don't trust anything he tells you about safety. If he's chosen you, you're already in danger. You kissed him. I know. I can smell it on you. The woman's expression softened slightly. Not your fault, dear. When they choose, we don't really get a say in the matter. The heart is very stupid when it comes to immortal predators. She pressed the book into Maya's hands and stood to leave. Wait, Maya called. What's your name? How do you know all this? The woman paused at the end of the aisle, looking back over her shoulder. My name doesn't matter anymore. As for how I know, she smiled sadly. I was chosen too, a long time ago. Broke my own rules. Fell in love with something that should have remained a fantasy. It ended the way these things always end. How? With blood and heartbreak, and the kind of regret that outlives mortality. She adjusted her bag. Read the book, Maya. Learn what he is, what they all are, and then decide if one night of feeling alive is worth an eternity of consequences. The old woman walked away, disappearing between the stacks. Maya looked down at the book in her hands. The title was embossed in faded gold, Chronicles of the Nightborn, a survivor's account. She opened it carefully. The first page bore a single inscription in elegant, handwritten script. To those who love what should destroy them, I'm sorry. I understand. Run anyway. Maya arrived at Rosie's diner at 2:45 p.m., the book hidden in her bag, Lucian's coin tucked into her pocket. The afternoon crowd was already forming. Truckers, construction workers, families with restless kids. Normal people living normal lives. She tied on her apron, grabbed her order pad, and tried to focus on work. But every time the door opened, her heart jumped. Every shadow in her peripheral vision made her turn. He didn't come during the dinner rush. Didn't come when the sun set, and the sky turned purple-black. By 10 p.m., Maya had convinced herself she'd imagined everything. Heat exhaustion, Too many late shifts. A very vivid hallucination brought on by stress and loneliness. Then the lights flickered. Just once. Just enough. Maya looked up from wiping down table 7 and saw him. Lucian stood outside, visible through the front window, illuminated by the streetlight. He wasn't hiding, wasn't lurking. He was just waiting. His eyes found hers across the distance, and even through the glass, she felt the impact. Her hands still on the table. He lifted one hand, a small gesture. Come outside. Maya glanced around. Jenna was in the back. Roger was on break. The last 2 customers were engrossed in their phones. She could slip out, just for a minute, just to tell him this was insane and she wanted nothing to do with it. That's what she told herself as she untied her apron and pushed through the front door. The October air was colder tonight, carrying the promise of early winter. Lucian stood perfectly still, hands in the pockets of his long black coat. He looked like something from another era, elegant and dangerous, and entirely out of place against the backdrop of the shabby diner. "You came back," Maya said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought maybe you'd come to your senses." A faint smile. "My senses are what brought me here." They stood 3 feet apart, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Maya could feel the coin in her pocket, growing warm against her thigh. "I know what you are," she said. "Not just vampire. King. You rule something. A court? A bloodline." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You've been researching." "A woman at the library gave me a book. She said," Maya hesitated. "She said if you've chosen me, I'm already in danger." She was right. The blunt admission stole her breath. "Then why are you here? Why put me at risk?" Lucian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that sounded like centuries of loneliness. "Because for 700 years, I've been alone. Not physically. I'm surrounded by courtiers and warriors and sycophants, but truly devastatingly alone." He took a step closer. "And then I saw you, serving coffee to ungrateful customers, smiling anyway, humming songs from another decade, fighting exhaustion with stubborn kindness. And I thought, that's what I've been missing. That spark, that humanity." "I'm not special," Maya whispered. "You're mortal. That makes you impossibly special." His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was electric. "My kind, we forget what it means to be vulnerable. We become so focused on power, on survival, on the endless game of politics and territorial disputes that we lose the very thing that made existence worthwhile." "And what's that?" "Connection." He said it like a prayer. Real messy, dangerous connection. Maya's eyes burned. She didn't know why. Couldn't explain the sudden well of emotion. "This is crazy." "Yes. You could kill me without thinking. I think of nothing else but not harming you. I'm a waitress from Newark. You're a 700-year-old vampire king. We don't make sense." "No," Lucian agreed. "We don't. So why does this feel right?" His thumb traced her jawline, featherlight. "Because sometimes the illogical thing is a true thing. Because destiny doesn't care about sense or safety. Because—" He leaned in, his forehead touching hers. "Because I've spent centuries making a rational choice, and it's left me emptier than death ever could." Maya's hands came up to rest on his chest. She could feel no heartbeat. The absence should have terrified her. Instead, it just made her sad. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you decide. Go back inside, finish your shift, forget me. Live a safe, normal life. Or—" He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "Or step across the threshold, into my world, where nothing is safe, but everything is real. That's not fair. You're asking me to choose without knowing what I'm choosing. I know, but I can't tell you more unless you commit. My world has rules, Maya. Ancient, unbreakable rules. The moment you cross that line, you become part of it, subject to its laws, its dangers, its consequences." She should walk away. The book in her bag had made that clear. Every account, every story ended in tragedy. Mortals who loved vampires didn't get happy endings. But when she looked into his eyes, those impossible, eternal eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw a loneliness that matched her own. She saw the weight of centuries spent feeling nothing. She saw hope, fragile and new and terrifying. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "what does that mean? Do you turn me? Make me like you?" "No, not unless you asked. And even then, not for a very long time. I don't want to change you, Maya. I want to know you as you are. But I'll age. I'll die." Pain flickered across his face. "Yes. And you'll go on." "Yes. Doesn't that make this pointless?" Lucian's hands came up to frame her face, his touch reverent. 60 years with you would be worth 1,000 years alone. If I get even one mortal lifetime to understand what this feeling is, I'll count myself blessed." A car drove past, its headlights sweeping over them. In that brief illumination, Maya saw him clearly. The perfect beauty, yes, but also the vulnerability beneath it. He was terrified. This ancient, powerful creature was absolutely terrified that she'd say no. That's what decided her. Not the danger. Not the promise of adventure. Not even the magnetic pull between them. The fact that something immortal could still be afraid. "Okay," she whispered. His eyes widened. "Okay, I don't understand this. I'm probably making the biggest mistake of my life. But," she smiled, surprising herself, "I've spent 3 years playing it safe, working double shifts, saving money for a future that never comes, avoiding risk, avoiding life. And for what? So I can die at 90 having never done anything that scared me. Maya, take me into your world. Lucian, show me what's real." For a heartbeat, he just stared at her. Then he pulled her close and kissed her, not with the desperate hunger of their first kiss, but with something deeper. Gratitude, wonder, the kind of tenderness that made her throat tight. When they broke apart, the world looked different. The colors were sharper. The air tasted sweeter. Or maybe it was just that she'd finally chosen something for herself. "My car is around the corner," Lucian said. "Come with me. Tonight, before you change your mind. I need to finish my shift." "No, you don't." He smiled, and there was something wild in it, something young despite his centuries. "You need to let go. Starting now." Maya glanced back at the diner. Through the window, she could see Jenna had emerged from the back, looking around for her. The sensible thing would be to go back, to ease into this, to maintain some semblance of her old life. Instead, she pulled off her apron and let it fall to the ground. "Let's go," she said. Lucian's smile was brilliant and devastating. He took her hand, cold fingers intertwining with warm, and led her into the darkness. Behind them, Jenna appeared in the doorway, calling out. But Maya didn't look back. She'd spent too much of her life looking back, being careful, making the safe choice. Tonight, she was choosing danger. Tonight, she was choosing real. As they disappeared into the shadows, the coin in her pocket flared with sudden heat, and somewhere in the darkness, something ancient stirred. The threshold had been crossed. There was no going back now. The car was everything Maya expected and nothing she was prepared for. A sleek black vehicle that looked more like a shadow on wheels than an actual automobile, purring with barely contained power as they slid through the empty streets. Lucian drove with the kind of fluid grace that came from centuries of practice, navigating turns without seeming to think about it. Maya watched the city transform outside her window. They'd left her familiar neighborhood quickly, moving through districts she barely recognized. The buildings grew older, more elegant, their architecture speaking of eras when craftsmanship mattered more than efficiency. Gas lamps, actual gas lamps, appear along the streets, casting warm golden light that seemed wrong for the century. "Where are we?" she asked. "Still in the city, just a different layer of it." Lucian glanced at her. "Your kind see one version of reality. Mine sees another. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes there are places that exist solely for us. That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to make sense. It simply is." They turned down a street that seemed to exist in permanent twilight, the sky above a perpetual deep purple despite the late hour. Elegant townhouses lined both sides, their windows glowing with candlelight. People moved along the sidewalks. If they could be called people, beautiful, all of them, with that same quality of stillness that marked Lucian. Vampires. She was looking at vampires going about their evening like it was the most normal thing in the world. How many are there? Maya whispered. In this city? Several hundred. Worldwide. He shrugged. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. We're not as rare as your story suggests, just very good at staying hidden. The car pulled up in front of a massive building that looked like it had been transplanted from Gothic Europe. All stone arches, pointed towers, and windows of stained glass that glowed from within. It was beautiful and terrifying, the kind of place that whispered of old power and older secrets. This is where you live? Maya asked. This is the Court of Shadows, the seat of my rule in the Eastern Territories. Lucian turned off the engine but didn't immediately move to exit. Instead, he looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Once you step inside, Maya, everything changes. They'll know about you. They'll judge you. Some will see you as weakness, others as opportunity. My enemies will try to use you against me, and my allies will question my judgment. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. His hand found hers in the darkness. I can protect you from physical harm, but the politics, the intrigue, the games they play, those are harder to shield against. You'll need to be strong, stronger than you think you are. Maya looked up at the imposing building, her heart hammering. What if I'm not strong enough? Then I misjudge you. He smiled faintly. But I don't think I have. He came around to open her door, offering his hand with old-world courtesy. Maya took it and stepped out onto cobblestones that probably predated the Revolutionary War. The air here felt different, thicker, charged with energy that made her skin prickle. Two figures emerged from the shadows flanking the entrance. Both tall, both inhumanly beautiful, both radiating danger like heat from a furnace. They wore modern clothes but carried themselves like medieval knights. My lord, the one on the left said, his voice carefully neutral. We did not expect you to return tonight. Plans change, Marcus. Lucian's hand settled on Maya's lower back, a gesture of claiming that didn't go unnoticed. This is Maya. She is under my personal protection. See that everyone knows. The two guards' eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to hide. She forced herself to stand tall, to meet their gazes even though every instinct screamed to look away. My lord, the other guard said carefully, perhaps we should discuss. There's nothing to discuss. Sebastian. Lucian's voice went cold, regal. You have your orders. They bowed as one and stepped aside. Lucian guided Maya forward, up the wide stone steps, through doors that swung open without anyone touching them. The interior stole her breath. The entry hall soared 3 stories high, its walls covered in tapestries that depicted scenes of battle and beauty in equal measure. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light fractured into thousands of dancing prisms. A grand staircase curved upward, its banister carved from what's so dark it was almost black. But it was the people, the vampires, that truly captured her attention. There had to be 30 of them scattered throughout the space, all conversation stopping the moment Lucian and Maya entered. Women in gowns that belonged in costume dramas. Men in suits that probably cost more than Maya made in a year. All of them beautiful. All of them predatory. All of them staring. Breathe, Lucian murmured in her ear. And whatever happens, stay close to me. A woman detached herself from a group near the staircase. She was stunning, dark hair cascading past her shoulders, skin like porcelain, wearing a blood-red dress that moved like liquid. But it was her eyes that caught Maya, pure gold, like coins catching fire. Lucian, the woman said, her voice carrying easily across the space. You bring a mortal into our hall. How unexpected. Seraphina. Lucian's tone was polite but distant. May I present Maya? She is my guest and under my protection. Seraphina circled them slowly, her gaze never leaving Maya. Your guest. How quaint. She stopped directly in front of Maya, close enough that Maya could smell her perfume. roses, and something darker, metallic. Tell me, little human, do you know what you walked into? Maya's mouth was dry, but she forced words out. A vampire court. Your home, I guess. My home. Serafina smiled, revealing perfect white teeth with just a hint of fong. And what makes you think you're welcome here? Enough. Lucian's voice cracked like a whip. She's here because I brought her. That makes her welcome. Does it? Another vampire stepped forward, male with silver hair and eyes like ice. Forgive me, my lord, but by what law? The covenant is clear. Mortals are not permitted in our sanctuaries unless marked for turning or claimed as blood servants. This girl is neither. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Maya felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. Lucian's hand tightened on her back. The covenant also states that a king has sovereign authority within his territory. I am exercising that authority. To what end? Serafina pressed. You bring a mortal, unmarked and unclaimed, into our midst. You put her under your personal protection. You do realize what this looks like. I know exactly what it looks like. The room went deadly silent. Maya's heart pounded so hard she was sure they could all hear it. The silver-haired vampire's eyes widened. You can't be serious. A mortal consort? Lucian, that hasn't been done in... For 100 years, Lucian finished. I'm aware of the precedent, or rather, the lack of it. The council will never allow it, Serafina said, but there was something in her voice now. Not just disapproval, but genuine concern. You know the laws. You help write them. A king cannot be bound to a mortal. It's too dangerous, too destabilizing. If she were to be used against you, then I'll deal with it. You can't possibly. I said I'll deal with it. Lucian's voice dropped to a register that made the chandelier crystals shiver. This discussion is over. Maya stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. No one spoke. The threat was implicit and absolute. Finally, Serafina inclined her head in a gesture that was acknowledgement, if not quite respect. As you wish, my lord. But don't say we didn't warn you. She looked at Maya one more time, and there was something almost like pity in her golden eyes. Good luck, little human. You're going to need it. She glided away, the rest of the vampires parting before her. Gradually, conversation resumed, though Maya could feel eyes still tracking her every movement. That went well, she muttered. Lucian almost smiled. That was actually better than I expected. No one tried to kill you. Is that really the bar we're setting? For tonight? Yes. He guided her toward the staircase. Come, I'll show you to your room. You'll be safe there. My room? I'm staying here. Did you think I'd bring you into this world and then leave you unprotected in your apartment? He looked at her seriously. They know about you now, Maya. Every vampire in this territory will have heard about you within the hour. Some out of loyalty, others out of curiosity, and a few out of malice. You can't go back to your old life. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The reality of what she'd done hit her like cold water. Her apartment, her job, her life, gone. Just like that. Because she'd kissed a vampire in a parking lot and decided to cross a threshold she hadn't fully understood. Lucian must have seen in her face because he stopped halfway up the stairs, turned to face her. I know this is overwhelming. I know you're scared. But I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you. You can't promise that. No, he admitted, but I can try. They reached the second floor, walking down a corridor lined with portraits, presumably previous rulers or important vampires. Maya tried not to think about how many of them were probably still alive somewhere, immortal and dangerous. Lucian stopped at a heavy wooden door carved with intricate patterns. This is you. He pushed it open, revealing a room that looked like something from a Gothic fantasy. A four-poster bed with velvet curtains. A fireplace with a marble mantel. Windows overlooking the courtyard below. Bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. A wardrobe that probably held clothes from multiple centuries. It's beautiful, Maya breathed. It's yours, for as long as you need it. Lucian stepped inside, lighting candles with a wave of his hand, that she definitely needed to ask about later. My chambers are down the hall. If you need anything, will you stay? The words escaped before she could think better of them. He turned surprised. Maya, not like that. She wrapped her arms around herself. I don't want to be alone right now. Everything is so strange, and I'm terrified, and you're the only thing in this whole place that doesn't look at me like I'm prey or a problem. Something softened in his expression. I shouldn't. It wouldn't be appropriate. Since when do you care about appropriate? You kissed me without permission, remember? A mistake I apologize for. So apologize for this too. Tomorrow. Tonight, just stay. Please. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, but I stay on that chair. He pointed to an ornate armchair by the fireplace. And you stay in the bed. Understood. Understood. Maya changed in the attached bathroom, finding a nightgown in the wardrobe that fit perfectly despite her never having been measured. She tried not to think about how Lucian had known her size, or what that implied about how closely he'd been watching her. When she emerged, he'd settled into the chair, his long legs stretched out, his coat discarded. In the candlelight, he looked younger somehow, less regal and more human. Almost. Can I ask you something? Maya said, climbing into the bed. The sheets were silk, cool against her skin. Anything. That woman, Serafina, is she were you two involved? Once. A long time ago. He stared into the fire. It ended badly. Most things between immortals do. And now she's my second in command. A trusted ally. Nothing more. She's still in love with you. Lucian's eyes cut to her, surprised. What makes you think that? The way she looked at you. The concern in her voice. That wasn't just political worry. Lucian, that was personal. He was quiet for a long moment. Perhaps, but love and eternity rarely coexist peacefully. We learned that the hard way. And yet you're trying again. With me, this is different. How? Because you're mortal. Because this is an ending. Maybe that's what makes it real. He met her eyes across the space. Forever is a long time to lie to yourself. But 60 years? 60 years demands honesty. Maya pulled the covers up to her chin, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only bone-deep weariness. I think I made a terrible mistake coming here. Probably. You're supposed to say I didn't. I don't lie to you, Maya. Not about important things. He stood and crossed the bed, sitting carefully on its edge. This is dangerous. You could get hurt. You probably will get hurt. But his hand found hers on top of the covers. But I think some risks are worth taking. Don't you? She squeezed his cold fingers. Ask me again in the morning. Fair enough. He started to pull away, but Maya held on. The coin you gave me. What is it really? A binding. A very old kind of magic. As long as you carry it, I can find you. I can feel if you're in danger. And if you call for me, his thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I'll come. No matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. I'll come. That sounds like a pretty serious commitment for someone you just met. Yes, he said simply. It is. They stayed like that for a while, hands linked, the fire crackling. Outside, the impossible twilight deepened into something like night, though Maya suspected it would never become truly dark in this strange corner of reality. Finally, Lucian stood. Sleep. Tomorrow, we begin your education. My education in what? Surviving in a world that wants to eat you. He smiled faintly, figuratively and literally. He returned to the chair, settling in with the stillness that marked his kind. Maya watched him for a moment, this beautiful, impossible, dangerous creature who'd upended her entire existence. Lucian? Thank you for not letting me face them alone. His eyes found hers in the darkness, glowing faintly red. Always, for as long as you'll have me. Maya closed her eyes, exhaustion finally pulling her under. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was how strange it was that she felt safer in a house full of vampires than she ever had in her own apartment. The coin under her pillow hummed with warmth. And in his chair, Lucian sat vigil through the night, watching over the mortal girl who'd made him feel something he'd thought lost forever. Hope. Maya woke to sunlight. Actual sunlight. Streaming through the windows in golden rays that looked wrong for a vampire's court. She sat up, disoriented, half expecting the room to have been a dream. But no. There was a four-poster bed, the fireplace now cold, the wardrobe standing sentinel against the wall. The chair where Lucian had sat was empty. A note rested on the small table beside the bed, written in elegant script on thick paper. Good morning. I've left clothes appropriate for court in the wardrobe. Someone will come to fetch you for breakfast at 9. Don't be alarmed by the sunlight. The court exists in a pocket reality where we control such things. We're not the monsters your stories paint us to be. Well, not entirely. Maya picked up her phone from the nightstand. 8:47 a.m. She had 13 minutes to make herself presentable for vampires. No pressure. The wardrobe did indeed contain clothes, though none were her style. Elegant dresses in deep colors, emerald burgundy, midnight blue. She chose the simplest one, a black dress that fell to mid-calf with long sleeves and a modest neckline. It fit perfectly, which should have been more unsettling than it was. A knock at exactly 9 made her jump. She opened the door to find a young woman, or young-looking woman, with auburn hair and kind eyes. She wore modern clothes, jeans and a sweater, which somehow made her more approachable. "Hi," the woman said with a genuine smile. "I'm Celeste. Lucian asked me to show you around, get you settled." She looked Maya up and down. "The dress suits you, better than the waitress uniform. Anyway, you know about that?" "Everyone knows about that. Gossip travels fast in immortal circles." Celeste gestured down the hallway. "Come on. Let's get you fed before the morning court session. You'll need your strength." They walked through corridors that seemed to shift slightly, the architecture not quite obeying normal rules of geometry. Maya tried to memorize the route, but gave up after the third turn that shouldn't have existed. "Don't worry," Celeste said, noticing her confusion. "You'll get used to it. The court adjusts itself based on need and hierarchy. Right now, it's protecting you by keeping you close to Lucian's wing. It's alive. Sentient might be too strong a word, but aware? Definitely. Old places like this, they absorb magic over centuries. They develop personality. They descended a different staircase than the one Maya had climbed last night, this one smaller and less grand. It led to a bright conservatory filled with plants that definitely shouldn't exist in October. Tropical flowers, climbing vines, trees that bore fruit in impossible colors. A table was set for one, laden with food that looked and smelled human. Fresh bread, fruit, cheese, coffee. No blood smoothies? Maya joked weakly. Celeste laughed. "We can eat regular food. We just don't need to." But Lucian wanted you comfortable. She poured coffee into a delicate cup. "He's been different since he decided to bring you here. Lighter, somehow. It's been a long time since I've seen him care about something beyond duty and politics." Maya sat, suddenly ravenous. "How long have you known him?" "About 200 years. I was turned in the 1820s, just a few years before I would have died of consumption." Celeste settled into a chair across from her, not eating. "Lucian found me, offered me a choice. Not many do that. Offer a choice. Most just take what they want." "Is that common? Turning people without asking?" "More common than it should be. The old laws say we need permission, but laws are only as good as their enforcement." Celeste's expression darkened. "There are vampires who see humans as cattle, resources to be used. Lucian isn't one of them, which makes him unusual among kings. But he still rules over creatures that do see humans that way." "Yes, it's complicated." Celeste watched Maya eat for a moment. "Can I give you some advice?" Uninvited and possibly unwelcome. Maya gestured with a piece of bread. "Sure, why not? Don't trust anyone here completely. Not even the ones who seem kind. We're all predators at heart, Maya. Even those of us who try to be better. And you," she leaned forward, "your vulnerability. Lucian's first real weakness in centuries. That makes you incredibly valuable to his enemies, and incredibly dangerous to his friends. Serafina already made that clear. Serafina is the least of your worries. She'll be coldly practical, maybe even cruel, but she won't truly harm you. She still cares about Lucian too much to destroy what makes him happy. Celeste's voice dropped. It's the others you need to watch for. The ones who smile and offer friendship while calculating how best to use you. A chill ran down Maya's spine. Is that what you're doing? Calculating. I'm calculating how to keep you alive long enough that Lucian doesn't descend into the kind of grief that starts wars. Celeste smiled but was sad. I've seen him lose things before. It's not pretty. So yes, I'm being kind to you partly because it's the right thing to do, but also because I don't want to see him shatter again. Again? That's a story to tell. Not mine. Celeste stood, finished eating. Court session starts in 20 minutes. You'll sit beside Lucian's throne. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't react no matter what you see. And for the love of whatever you hold holy, don't show fear. They can smell it. That's a figure of speech, right? Unfortunately, no. The throne room was nothing like Maya expected. She'd imagined something medieval, all stone and shadow. Instead, she found herself in a circular chamber with walls of frosted glass that glowed with internal light. The ceiling was a dome painted with constellations that slowly moved, and in the center on a raised dais sat two thrones carved with what looked like black crystal. Lucian occupied one, dressed in dark clothes that managed to look both modern and timeless. He radiated authority, his posture perfect, his expression controlled. This was Lucian the king, not the vulnerable creature who'd sat in her room last night. He saw her enter, and something flickered in his eyes. Warmth, relief, hunger. Then it was gone, replaced by regal composure. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying easy across the space. "Join me?" Celeste nudged her forward. Maya walked across the empty floor, acutely aware of the vampires filing in behind her, filling seats that rose in tiers around the circular space. Hundreds of them, all watching her. She climbed the dais, and Lucian stood, offering his hand. When she took it, he pulled her close for a moment, his lips brushing her ear. "You look terrified." "Good. So am I." Then he guided her to the second throne. Maya sat, gripping the armrest to keep her hands from shaking. "This is where your queen would sit," Lucian murmured. "If I had won. Now it's yours. Claim it. I don't know how to. You don't have to know. Just sit. Be present. That's enough." The room settled, all eyes forward. Lucian raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. "Court is in session," he announced. "Bring forward those who seek judgment or audience." What followed was 2 hours of vampire politics that made Maya's head spin. Territorial disputes, requests for permission to turn mortals, accusations of breaking the covenant. Through it all, Lucian listened with perfect attention, asked pointed questions, and delivered judgments that seemed fair if harsh. Maya remained silent, watching, learning. She began to understand the dynamics. Who deferred to whom, which vampires held real power versus those who only pretended to. Serafina stood at Lucian's right hand, whispering occasional counsel. Others approached the throne with respect or fear or thinly veiled resentment. Then a vampire was brought forward in chains. He was young-looking, maybe early 20s, with dark hair and wild eyes. 2 guards flanked him, holding the chains that bound his wrists. Silver, Maya realized. The metal was smoking where it touched his skin. "Marcus Chun," Lucian said, his voice cold, "you stand accused of creating progeny without permission and abandoning them. 3 mortals turned, none trained. All left a rampage through the city until we hunted them down. 2 were destroyed. 1 is being rehabilitated." He leaned forward. "Why?" "They were nobody," Marcus spat. "Street trash. I was hungry. They were available. I didn't think." "No, you didn't think. That's the problem." Lucian's eyes blazed red. "We have laws for a reason, Marcus. We maintain the covenant to protect ourselves and the mortals who don't know we exist. You endangered everything for momentary pleasure. So what? You bring a human into our court, flaunt her like a trophy, and I'm the one being judged." Marcus's laugh was bitter. At least I had the decency to turn mine. You're just keeping yours as a pet. The room erupted in murmurs. Maya's hands tightened on the armrests. Lucian stood slowly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Let me be very clear," he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Maya is here by choice. She is under my protection. She is not a pet, not a possession, not a resource to be exploited. She is—" He paused, and for just a moment, the king's mask slipped. "She is mine in the way that matters. By choice, by connection, by something you clearly don't understand." He descended from the dais, approaching Marcus with predatory grace. "Your victims didn't have a choice. You took it from them. You violated the most sacred law we have, consent, and for that, you'll face consequences. You're going to destroy me? For 3 humans." Marcus looked around wildly. "Is no one going to speak against this? He's drunk on mortal pussy, and you're all just—" Lucian moved faster than Maya could track. One moment he was 5 feet away. The next his hand was around Marcus's throat, lifting him off the ground. "Choose your next words very carefully," Lucian said softly, "because they might be your last." Marcus struggled, choking. Finally, Lucian released him, letting him crash to the floor. "I'm not going to destroy you," Lucian said. "That would be too easy. Instead, you'll spend the next 50 years in service to the rehabilitation house, teaching young vampires control. You'll face every night the consequences of your actions. You'll learn what it means to value life beyond your own hunger." He turned to the guards. "Take him away." As Marcus was dragged out, still cursing, Lucian returned to his throne. He looked tired suddenly, the weight of leadership showing in the set of his shoulders. The session continued. More petitioners, more judgments. But Maya barely heard any of it. She was thinking about what Marcus had said, about the fine line between protection and possession, about whether she was really here by choice, or if Lucian's magnetism had stripped that choice away as surely as Marcus had stripped away his victim's humanity. Finally, mercifully, the session ended. The vampires filed out, though Maya felt their stares lingering even after they'd gone. "Walk with me," Lucian said, offering his hand. They left through a side door that led to the courtyard she'd seen from her window. It was beautiful in daylight, or whatever passed for daylight here, with gardens that shouldn't bloom in October, but did anyway. Roses, lilies, flowers she didn't have names for. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," Lucian said. "Which part? The vampire being a monster, or you nearly killing him?" "Both. Though I'd argue he was the monster, not me. You terrified him. You terrified everyone in that room." "Yes, because I'm king. Because that's what's required." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "Did he terrify you?" Maya considered lying, decided against it. "A little. Not the violence." "Exactly. More. How easily it came to you. How natural. I've been doing this for 700 years, Maya. Violence is part of the territory. Literally." He took her hand. "But I need you to understand something. What I feel for you, what you are to me, that's the opposite of what Marcus did." He took without asking. "I'm asking every day for you to stay. There's a difference." "Is there?" "You said yourself I can't go back to my old life, that I'm in danger out there now. That's not really giving me a choice, is it?" Pain flickered across his face. "You're right. I've backed you into a corner, without meaning to. And if you want to leave, truly leave, I'll arrange protection. Set you up somewhere safe, somewhere far from here. Give you money, a new identity, whatever you need to start over." "You let me go?" "It would destroy me," he admitted. "But yes, I'd let you go, because keeping you here against your will would make me no better than Marcus, no better than the monsters I judge." Maya looked up at this beautiful, dangerous, impossibly complex creature. She thought about her apartment, her job at the diner, her small, safe, boring life. Then she thought about the feel of his lips on hers, the warmth of the coin in her pocket, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. "I don't want to leave," she said quietly, "but I need to know this is real, not just some vampire compulsion or ancient magic. That what I feel is mine. How can I prove that? Let me go back. To my apartment, my job. Give me a week in my old life to think, to be sure. Then I'll come back. If I come back, you'll know it's choice. Real choice. Lucian was quiet for a long time. She could see the war playing out behind his eyes, the desire to keep her close warring with his respect for her agency. Finally, he nodded. A week. But you keep the coin, and I'm assigning Celeste to watch over you from a distance. Not to control you, he added quickly, seeing her expression, just to keep you safe from my enemies. Some of them won't wait to see if you come back. They'll try to eliminate the threat now. Okay, that's fair. And Maya? He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Come back, please, because I don't think I can bear losing you now that I know what this feels like. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. 1 week, then we'll see. Her apartment looked exactly the same, and completely different. Maya stood in the middle of her studio, seeing it through new eyes. The water-stained ceiling, the single window that looked out on a brick wall, the futon that served as both couch and bed, the kitchenette with its 2 burners and miniature refrigerator. This had been enough. For 3 years, this had been her whole world. Now it felt like a cage. She set her bag down and pulled out the coin. It was warm, as always, and holding it made her feel connected to Lucian even across the distance. She wondered if he could sense her, if he was resisting the urge to appear at her door. Her phone buzzed. Jenna, where the hell have you been? Called you like 50 times. Roger's pissed. Says if you don't show for your shift tomorrow, you're fired. Maya typed back, family emergency. I'm sorry. I'll be there tomorrow. She would. She'd go back to the diner, put on the uniform that smelled like coffee and grease, serve people who barely saw her. She'd do the things she'd done for 3 years and see if it still fit. That night, she lay in her futon and stared at the ceiling. The coin rested on her chest, rising and falling with her breath. In the distance, she heard sirens, shouts, the sounds the city go about its violent, human business. She'd never felt more alone, or more certain. The week passed in a strange duality. By day, Maya worked at the diner, smiled at customers, pretended everything was normal. By night, she read the book the old woman had given her, learning about vampire courts and ancient laws, and the dozens of ways mortals had died loving immortals. Celeste never revealed herself, but Maya felt her presence, a shadow that moved too smoothly, a customer who watched too carefully, protection disguised as coincidence. On the 7th night, Maya packed a bag. Not everything. She'd come back for the rest later, maybe, but enough. Enough to make it clear this wasn't just a visit. She left her apron hanging on the hook by the door. She left a note for her landlord about the lease. She took one last look at the life she was leaving behind. Then she held the coin, closed her eyes, and whispered, I'm ready. Take me home. The air shifted. She felt rather than heard his arrival, a displacement of space, a sudden warmth at her back. You came back, Lucian said, his voice rough with emotion. Maya turned. He stood in her tiny apartment, looking impossibly out of place and completely right. His eyes were red, blazing with hunger and relief and something that might have been love. I chose to come back, she corrected. That's different. Yes, it is. He crossed to her in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands. Are you sure? Absolutely sure? Because once you cross that threshold again, Maya, I'm not letting you go. Not for a week, not for a test. I'll love you until you die, and then I'll grieve you for centuries. That's what you're signing up for. An ending that will break me. Then we'd better make it worth the heartbreak, she said. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 700 years. And Maya kissed him back, pouring everything into it. Her fear, her choice, her stubborn, reckless hope that sometimes the illogical thing is a true thing. When they broke apart, her apartment had faded. They stood instead in the court of shadows, in the room that had become hers, the fire already burning, the windows showing that perpetual twilight. Welcome home, Lucian whispered. And Maya, former waitress, current consort to a vampire king, smiled. Home. Yeah, I think it is. Outside, the world went on without her. But inside, in this pocket reality where monsters loved and ruled and learned to be human, Maya had found something she'd been searching for without knowing it. Not safety, not certainty, but something real, something worth risking everything for. And as Lucian pulled her close, as a coin warmed between them, as the court settled around its new mortal heart, Maya understood. This was only the beginning.